My name is Cecelia, and I love to win. Now, to you, winning might not be that big of a deal, but for me, it's everything. And over my lifetime, I've had to realize that there are different ways to get to a win. There are different definitions of it, what it means to be winning, based on the circumstance. But at the end of the day, that's what I want to do. I want to win, and I want to win all the time. And the second that I actually realized that about myself, my life kind of changed because I was able to have a completely different direction for my life, right? And so that's what I want to make sure that you can do too, which is identify what your core values are, what your motivation is. My name is Cecelia Towns. I'm the Sporty Esquire, and you're here with me for another episode of Working Women Wednesday, the series where I share with you the things that I've learned, the things that I'm learning for my career as an attorney, an entrepreneur, and a former athlete. Now, last week, if you joined me on Working Women Wednesday, you know that I talked about the importance of identifying your values when you're talking about making decisions and making moves with your career, because it really can inform just the way you work and then how successful you feel at the end of your career. Well, I got some questions about, all right, that's cool and all, but how do I even go about identifying my core values? And that's a really good question. And I have what I think is a really good answer. So again, to remind you, it's important to identify your core values, because those are the things that really motivate you. And if you want to feel fulfilled in life, if you want to feel like you're really having an impact, then you'll let your core values dictate how you move in life, help you make decisions, help inform your behaviors, that sort of thing. Two things to keep in mind before we get to how to identify your core values. One is that things and people change, and so should you, right? So that means that at any given point, you might have to reassess and see what your core values are, because they could change. Things could happen. You could have, have kids to add to your list, and that'll change your whole world. Maybe something traumatic happens and it makes you appreciate things in a different way. Whatever the circumstances are, just know that your core values over time, they can change and they should change, and that's okay. The other thing is that there's a lot of values out there, a lot of things that people could value. And so it could take some time to narrow down what your core values are, because as you'll see in a second, your core values are just a few. Like, you can count them on one or two hands. So just be patient with yourself. If you feel overwhelmed, you feel like you have, oh my gosh, these are all these things I value, don't worry, I'll show you how to narrow it down. So let's get to the nitty-gritty of it, how to identify your core values. The first thing you want to do is really to either make a list or to use a list. So I'm a fan of making your own list, because I think that you can sometimes look at a list of things. Well, me personally, I can look at a list of things and I see like all of these good values, and I'm like, oh yeah, I should value that too. Put that on my list. Well, that is not necessarily, that doesn't necessarily get to the core of what you value. Sometimes our brain sees things that we think are good and we're like, oh yeah, I want to attach myself to that. But if you take the time and make your own list, it's a more genuine list, and I think you can get to the core of who you are a little quicker. So some of the things that I've done to identify my core values is I figure out what makes me tick. And when I say tick, I mean tick in a good way and a bad way, right? So what are the things that motivate me? What are the things, who are the people even who inspire me and why? What are some of my high points in life, some of my low points in life? And by doing that, I promise you'll come to realize what are the things that you really value. So take me, for instance. I said that one of the things I really value is winning. And I was able to identify that winning was one of the things I valued just by the different high points in my life and how I felt. And really why I felt the way I felt during those times in my life, whether it was me playing sports or me being an attorney, whatever it was, winning was just a great feeling. Conversely, I know that I don't deal well with dishonesty. I don't deal well with dishonesty from others, but more importantly, I don't deal well with dishonesty from myself. So when I feel like I'm not my most genuine self, that I can't be my authentic self, like that's a low point for me. That's an icky point for me. I'm not going to be very productive. So that I know that in life, if I can't go about doing what I do, being the best or the most authentic version of Cece, then it's something that's a non-starter for me. But I only got to that from, looking back over my life and realizing at the times when I felt kind of icky, right? So do that. Identify the high points and the low points, and that'll help get you to your value system. Then you want to narrow it down. So like I said, there's a bunch of different things that you can value in life. And in order to get to your core values, which are the things that are going to help inform your decision making, you have to make sure that you only have 5 to 10 values on your core value list. I like to be closer to 5 than 10 because it just gives me something to focus in on. But you narrow down your list. One of the ways I narrowed down my list was to kind of group things together. So going back to this thing about me winning, I was able to title it winning because I looked at things that I valued, like my clients being happy, like me feeling like I was doing my utmost, my best, me winning in sports, like that feeling of being victorious. And I was able to combine those all into winning. And so for me, when I say winning, I don't always mean hoisting up a trophy, right? Sometimes winning is about the feeling that I know my client feels because we were successful. That's a win for me. But I was able to title it winning because I just grouped things together. So that'll help you narrow things down just by grouping them together. And then you want to rank them. So again, because things change, your ranking system can change over time. But when you're doing it, rank them to see what's most important to you, because sometimes your values might seem in conflict with each other. And I'll explain that more in like just a second, but ranking them is important. So after you have your list of 5 or 10 values, then you want to test yourself. List them all down and score yourself on a scale of 1 to 10. See how you're doing, right? And if you score yourself at a 6 or below, which is a 60%, then you know that you need to identify an area that you need to work on. So for me, for instance, financial stability is one of my top 5. And, a while ago when I was rating myself, I was like, sis, you're not doing so well. So I had to come up with a plan to get rid of debt, and so that I could feel like I had the financial stability that's important to me. Now, I just talked about how sometimes they can conflict with each other. Another one of the things that's important to me, it goes hand in hand with being my authentic self, is just like freedom, like being able to be a free spirit. And sometimes that conflicts with my desire to have financial stability because I get a little antsy and I want to take a little trip. I want to go out for drinks with the girls. And so both of those things, financial stability and being spontaneous, make me me and make me feel great. But there are some times when some of the values have to take a back seat so that other values can come into play and then allow you to get back to, the other value for me, which is being spontaneous. I can't be spontaneous if my coins ain't right. So that's what I remind myself when I'm making my decisions. But that's it. Identify your core values so that your life and career can flourish. Make your list, narrow it down, and routinely check yourself. When you're checking your list, you're testing how you're doing, make that a routine. Monthly, bi-monthly, quarterly, whatever you think you need, but continue to check in with yourself so that you're always gauging how well you're doing. This has been Cecelia Towns for another episode of Working Women Wednesday. Stay tuned for more information from me and look out on the blog for a worksheet that'll help you identify and check in on your core values. Thanks for joining me. I'll see you here next Wednesday. Bye.